my hand is up in the air.
All right, good to go.
Okay. Welcome to the Capital Outlay Committee at the meeting. And today is Thursday, March 17th. It's 1 p.m. And may I wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. We are here to discuss some new business, but let's do a call to order. I'm Rich Larios, I'm the chairman.
Bruce Nightingale.
John Chory?
Martha Donovan.
Thank you. So let's go to Roman numeral 2, which is new business, and I'm going to take it over to our town administrator. Joe, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Happy St. Patrick's Day indeed. And I apologize for being all over the camera work. I'm trying to make sure that I can access documents and share the screen, so that's why I'm on GoToMeeting. I'm going to turn my camera off. But, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we have our water wastewater superintendent come to the center table, which can be referred to as the hot seat. And as you folks know, as those of you present and Ms. Donovan remotely, you all participated in the joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and your committee, the Capital Outlay Committee, as required. And you heard discussion about an item that has not yet formally come before you folks. Dan Pelletier, our water wastewater superintendent, is now here to formally present a request for this to be added to the fiscal year 2023 capital outlay budget. And as I said at the previous meetings, he has a funding source unrelated to free cash, which is helpful.
Take it away.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Capital Outlay Committee, for pulling the meeting together. I know everyone's been busy with meetings the last couple weeks. So before you is an article on behalf of the Water Wastewater Commission for additional design funds for the fiscal year 23 town meeting warrant in the amount of $300,000. The article is proposed to be funded from water retained earnings. And the real purpose, as we've kind of gone through before, is in response to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding, which is going to be coming through the state revolving loan program. So in order to make ourselves receive or eligible to receive these funds, we have to get a design done and apply for an SRF loan to fund the construction for the project. So that's what this article is seeking to accomplish. Furthermore, if I can keep going, I did hand out, Martha, apologies, I had handed the board present a couple of documents with included an updated capital project request form for the design article. And I also included with that what was previously presented to the board, or the committee, in our first meeting, that included the fiscal year 25 distribution system upgrades. So those were 4 projects that I'd identified that the water department would like to pursue with this funding. So these are still the 4 projects that we're hoping to accomplish. It's not likely we'd be able to do all 4, but likely one of these 4 projects. And those are really going to be contingent upon the bucket of money that the infrastructure bill actually falls into, because they do distribute it amongst the various funds, some for drainage, some for wastewater, drinking water, IT. So there's a variety of funding that's going to be coming through the infrastructure bill. So I've identified a handful of projects. So depending on where the money falls, I'm hoping that these projects will fall in one of those eligibility buckets.
Just let me, one is, Martha, the one that's going to affect the budget is the $300,000. That, of course, is in year 23. It's called FY23 Water Main Design. The category is infrastructure, and the priority is that it's an enhancement. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that, or not that understood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The other thing is, can you please tell me, you spoke of 4 projects?
Yep.
Are they written down at all?
So following,
Are they just pictorials?
they're pictorial with small narratives on the pages there behind.
But they're not reflected in a project request?
Not in the FY25 distribution system sheet that you have there. I didn't want to specify as which one of these we would be pursuing until I better understand where the money's coming, which pot would be applying for, if that makes sense.
It makes sense for you. The question that I have is, if there are dollar amounts and they are in year 24 and out, and if there is no dollar value put in, we have a problem next year trying to get them on, and we have to go to town meeting, during town meeting, and say we're going from 0 to some other number.
Yep.
0 plus 1, and that takes 2/3 of a vote to get that.
So I think I have us covered. So the fiscal year 25 distribution upgrade article that was submitted and I believe voted at our first, this for fiscal year 25, when we did our first capital presentation to the committee,
Oh, it's there?
there was a construction article for fiscal year 25.
I didn't bring that. You got it there? Bear with me for a second.
Yep.
It's in 25.
Okay, so it's for
10 million.
It was a placeholder for,
10 million.
yes, and if I,
Distribution system upgrades,
yep,
$10 million.
and that $10 million price tag was the combination of all 4 of these projects.
Okay,
Okay.
Not anticipating to do them all. I don't know that we would be able to raise rates enough to support the debt we'd have to take on to do them all,
Okay.
but I'm looking to do
but they
one.
are identified.
Yeah,
Okay, then, that's fine, and in voting the plan, that's noted.
right.
Okay.
And it typically will take a 2-year process, so the SRF loan program, we submit this summer to get listed on the 2023 intended use plan, and then we'd be able to pursue funding in 2024 for fiscal year 25. So it's a 2-year process to get funding.
So if it goes into 24, we'd be addressing it in 23, and it would be a budget item in 24.
One more year out.
The
And
10
it's the play between fiscal year and calendar year.
Well, this is where we have an issue. If it's being identified after the vote of town meeting in May, or whatever date it is, okay? And it goes into next year's process, if it's in 24, it has to go in 24.
Yeah, I think,
Joe, am I saying it wrong, or? You got 10 million already that we'd be voting in the plan.
Right, so the first point I would want to bear is, the second item on your agenda today is a discussion and possible vote to adopt the plan.
Correct.
Because you haven't done that yet.
Right.
And so as we're talking about that, that would be the first item to come up. If you're talking about the quantum of vote to amend, are you getting to the 2/3 vote?
No, I'm getting to, if we're going to include a number, if you redefine or whatever the project is, one of the 4 or
Yep.
one of the 6 or whatever, and you identify it and you want to put it in 24, is that possible?
I think 24 would be too early. And it's because the overlap with fiscal year and calendar year and the submission deadlines for the SRF program.
Okay,
So we submit, should this be voted and approved at town meeting, we would submit for the intended use plan this summer. The actual release of who's on the intended use plan doesn't come out until 2023. So we wouldn't even be able to apply for the SRF program until the following summer after fiscal year 24 town meeting. So we would be requesting construction funds the following year at fiscal year 25.
And fiscal year 25 is what's presently reflected in the application,
Yep.
and which dovetails to the existing dollar amount that's in the current proposed plan.
so whatever you're affecting, you're going to affect the $10 million that exists in 25.
Yes, and that 10 million would be reduced once we identify the
Okay.
project. Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, good. The 4 projects then that you have here, Is the 300,000 covering the design for those 4 projects?
Not all
No.
4. The 300 I'm only anticipating will cover the design for one of them.
For one of them?
Yeah.
Okay. So then what's the design cost for the other 3, and where is that at?
So I don't know that we would be able to do all 4 projects. Between the $7 million water main on Route 28, we have a new well construction that we're anticipating to take on in the next couple years. I don't believe that we would be able to do all 4 of these and sustain the debt without raising rates considerably. So I'm really only looking to target one, because I believe we have enough, we do have projects in the pipeline that I believe we're gonna be able to receive some benefit from the infrastructure bill already. That being the Phase 3 of the sewer project. I'm hopeful that we'll also get some forgiveness on the 28 sewer main project, as well as the water project. So those, I believe, were already in the pipeline to realize some of that infrastructure money. And this is, I'm trying to get one more project in the queue. So although I would love to do all 4 of these projects, I just don't think we could do it from a financial perspective at this point.
So which one are you picking out of the 4? This 300,000, what is the
Yeah.
target? What's the targeting? One of the 4 projects?
So-
Or one of the 4 you're targeting?
If it was up to me
Yeah.
completely, I would target the West Harwich Resiliency Project.
And who's it up to, the commissioners?
Yeah.
Okay. So 300,000 will cover one project.
Yeah.
And you've got 4 projects on the table. It's up to the water commissioners to pick one of the 4 to go forward, okay?
Right. And another component in that is, as I was mentioning, the infrastructure money's parsed out into a bunch of different programs within the SRF program. So if one of these is more eligible for a larger sum of money, it may be advantageous for us to pursue that. So you think lead service lines. We don't have lead service lines, fortunately, but if we did, there's a lot of money in that bucket right now, so we want to prioritize that project over one that isn't. So we have on Route 28 a water main from 1936. Oh,
No, I'm just saying, you got 300 there, we're gonna get approved, or will approve. And your management, whoever your board, is gonna choose one of the 4. You got 300 covered, and that's enough to cover one of the 4.
yes.
Okay, then we're good. Joe?
Can I just ask the superintendent to repeat, what was the project you said if you were the decision maker?
The West Harwich Resiliency Project, which is one of the 4 identified in the FY25 distribution upgrade.
What would that be,
So,
that's within the distribution system upgrades?
yes.
Thank you. I just want to be able to tie it back to the plan that you're looking at.
Go ahead.
That's my question also. The West Howard project that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Has that got anything to do with the water main replacements that are gonna be on Route 28? But
It's not connected, well, it will ultimately backfeed that side, that portion, the western portion of that water main project.
okay,
What we're looking to fix, if you will, with the resiliency project is we only have 2 water main crossings on the Route 28 and Lower County Road Bridge. So what keeps me up at night is, think a big storm pushing boats under those bridges, right? The water main's just hanging off the bottom of it. And if we lost those water mains, all of West Harwich would lose water for a considerable amount of time until we could get a temporary water main up and over the bridge. What this would do is backfeed West Harwich through Bell's Neck, so that if we lost those 2 water mains under the bridge, we could simply close those gate valves and keep water service to all of West Harwich.
okay, got it.
Yeah. So, okay, I've figured out that one of the 4 projects is being funded with the design portion of the 300,000. The 10 million now is being allocated for which projects? One of these projects and anything else?
So the 10 million is likely going to be reduced. For example, this West Harwich project is likely only $2 to $2.5 million to accomplish. Not knowing what was going to happen with the infrastructure money, I wanted to just put a placeholder out there. So if they said we're giving everyone free money, to do these projects, then sure, we'd try to get all 4 of them in. But it's likely that the principal forgiveness will be in the neighborhood of, 15 to 20% on these projects.
I have a question for Joe, and it has to do with the 10 million. If a number goes down, we've been approaching this like, if you didn't put a number in, and you want to change it, from zero, if it were zero, you can't go negative. So if 0 to 1 takes the vote,
The charter presently reads, any amendment.
even going down.
Simply says, any amendment.
Yeah, so,
And so we have to interpret that as broadly as possible, which again gives me grave concern, because we have to interpret it very broadly as to what was intended by, quote, any amendment.
yeah, I
So
think that,
certainly if we're going 10 million higher, 2/3. If we're going 10 million and lower, 2/3.
and that was an issue in discussion at the board the other night.
Correct.
And the discussion was bid high or put your number in high, and if you come in lower, you're safe. That's not the case.
Well, you're not safe, but we are working on the logic that if numbers are going down, there's a greater likelihood of success with the 2/3 vote. Conversely,
But the issue is, there's still a 2/3 vote.
without
Your
question.
default,
Correct, without question.
I think some people in the room Monday night considered going down, not an issue, no vote.
Yeah, again, I've been working with council.
Probably the best way to go, but,
Right.
so if we add some logic to what the rules of the game that we're playing under, it would be a lot easier. Okay.
So what else projects for the 10 million then?
The other three that are in the packet that I included, there's a pipe discontinuity project. So the water main right outside of Town Hall here goes from 12-inch to 10-inch at Chatham Road to 8-inch in front of Brooks Park, back to 10-inch just beyond Town Hall, back down to 8-inch once you get past Sisson Road, and then back up to 12-inch by Old Main Street. So that's a project where we're looking to replace that with one consistent water main throughout our town center here.
And to make life easy on you, John, every map has a title, and that's the project
Yeah,
name.
but it's $300,000 is for design of one project.
Yeah.
Okay. To pay for that one project, we're going to the $10 million to pay for that one project. So that leaves 3 projects out of the 4 left.
Right.
And you're thinking that this, if we pick the one you'd like to pick, that's about a $2 million project.
Yeah.
So you've got $8 million left out of
I
the
would
10.
propose to reduce that 10 at that point to 2 million for FY '25.
Oh, so okay.
So
So
without-
you wouldn't be funding those other 3 projects
No,
then?
and only
Oh.
purely because I don't believe we can afford to fund all of them at this point in time with everything else we have on capital. Unless more information comes out from the Fed that suggests that there's going to be an increase in principal forgiveness or some other avenue to recoup our investment, I would be concerned the rate increase would have to do to maintain the debt for doing $10 additional million worth of work.
So what's the 10 million for then?
So like I said, I'd put the 10 as a placeholder, not knowing, when I first submitted the capital forms, we had no idea what the federal government was going to do with the infrastructure bill. So I wanted to get as much in there as we could so we could have this discussion. The federal government still has not given us a ton of information as to how the money's coming, other than it's going to go through the formula programs.
Right.
So my whole plan here was to let's get everything on the table, let's identify projects, let's see which bucket of money we can pull from, because we may, for example, there's a project here, we have an above-ground water main on Lothrop Ave. We applied last year for a CZM grant, a coastal resiliency grant, that we sought to put that water main underground because it would, restore the area there, and it's also safer underground than above ground exposed to the elements and whatnot. This project might be eligible for some environmental bucket of money that the infrastructure bill goes into, where the pipe discontinuity in Harwich Center may fall under a different bucket of money. So until I understand where the money's gonna fall, I wanted to put in a few projects so that if one was more fit into a bucket better than the other one, we could do that. So it was really just to try to make sure that we had as many options as possible to take advantage of the money.
But will the 10 million cover 3 more projects, though?
If we funded the full 10 million, yeah,
Yeah.
we could accomplish all of them.
All 4 projects?
I believe we could.
Okay.
I mean, let me just.
So is it, if you get what you want, it's possible that the 10 million would go to 8 million, then the 8 million would disappear
Right.
out of the plan?
Oh,
Okay, let me, okay,
Okay.
we're gonna waste a lot, not waste, we're gonna be discussing this a lot. Unfortunately, there's no right, wrong answer, because it's sort of up in the air on what gets approved and so forth, and the funding source and so forth. May I make a suggestion is that we worry about what is requested in the budget and what appears for the 10 million, and that covers the 4. I suggest that after town meeting, when we go into the old way of handling this, and this will happen with Joe, we start in September, but we've got the summer and early fall to get the water commissioners in. I'm not putting the onus on you, because you're just presenting to them, they're gonna make the decision, do you have enough in retained earnings or whatever your source is to pay for whatever, and what was the effect for the first request? And how is it being handled, so you have some history behind you. You agree? I mean,
I think I understand, yeah.
yeah, all I wanna do is, they're gonna be questioned at town meeting, okay? And I suggest that you get your support from whoever your water commissioners are to support you in whatever you wanna say. We support you on what you're attempting to do, and that is request for the 300,000 and in filling in the blank with $10 million, part of that is gonna be used. And that's what we're approving. And if we approve that, we have to understand the residual, and the residual is on the onus is on the water commissioners, how they wanna handle it. Do they wanna do a project? He just recommended the project that he would pick. I don't know, do you have the authority to say, I want project A? I don't know, and I would assume you don't. Okay, so we're working with, if this happens, this happens, this happens, and we're spinning, okay? We're gaining information, but I think we need to gain the information from the water commissioners, how they feel. Also, how are we fixed in terms of retained earnings to be appropriated and getting government funds? You agree?
Yeah, so right now I can say we have about 1.6 million in retained earnings.
Okay.
And yes, no, I agree, and it is ultimately the Water Commission's decision, which project. But what I would also add is, should this go forward and get supported at town meeting, I would say this summer, we'll have a project, I'm gonna try to get it identified before town meeting so we can speak specifically about one thing. If that doesn't happen, the project will be selected by this summer, and with next year's capital budget request, that 10 million would be reduced to reflect only the project we're pursuing.
Okay, and let's remember that whatever the budget is that we have, not you, but that this committee has approved in terms of recommendations, is still subject to change to town meeting. So Joe, if in fact they decide to do something else, we still have the opportunity
Correct.
to do a change. So
Correct.
I'm good.
Yeah, the 300,000 would cover any of these 4 projects as far as design.
Yeah.
Right now, you're pushing for the West Harwich Resiliency Project, but if the commissioners say we want the Lothrop project,
Yeah.
the 300,000's there, and the reason why you're trying to move it up to 23 is just if these federal funds become available, you'll have a shovel-ready project
Right.
to take advantage of. But there's no guarantee of, it's like a grant, look, you're applying for a grant, and there's no guarantee in grants.
Right.
Okay.
So we have to add the 300,000 to the 23 budget.
Correct. You've got to amend, you got to make a motion to amend 23.
That's right, because we've already
Okay.
voted the 23.
Joe,
Correct. This would be the first of several.
you got more?
Absolutely. However, to that point, I think the question has to be asked and answered before we go any further. what is the anticipated source to fund the $300,000 request?
Water retained earnings.
I thought you mentioned that, yeah.
Because I think what you would want to do is, first of all, you would want to vote to reconsider your adoption votes wholesale, as well as your overall adoption vote. And then you would want to make a motion relative to this application and identify the proposed funding source.
Carol, let me ask you a question. Retained earnings for the water department is the net of some kind of income less expenses. Okay. Is that operating expenses and debt and so forth on top of revenue?
It would be your total expenses, so whatever category that fell under.
Okay. And how about revenue?
And so it would be your total revenue that you collected,
Okay.
no matter whether it's user fees or investment revenue or any other revenue.
Okay, so in essence, if there were other projects aside from the 4 that you've identified as capital, like it could be human resources, it could be buildings, it could be whatever, your pensions or whatever, I don't know. But those expenses are built in to affect retained earnings. So if you don't handle those expenses and somehow keep or grow income, the retained earnings available to fund a project for you is going to really affect what can be done.
So the retained earnings that we have right now it's certified just like the general fund free
Yeah.
cash is certified. So moving forward, we have 1.6 million in there now.
Right.
The Water Commission typically has a budgeted surplus of revenue of about 10%. So if our operating budget's 4 million, we try to budget rates to take in 4.4 million. So we contribute about 400,000 to retained earnings. So that essentially is our savings account. I don't know if I followed your question.
Well, the issue is there may be other projects in the future that affect retained earnings that are
Balance.
not one of these 4.
Correct.
And in setting priorities by your commissioners, these may seem like good projects today, but if some emergency happened, like one of the tanks fell,
Yeah.
something happened, they're certainly, when they look at what has to be done, the water tank would probably eat up some or all of retained earnings.
Right, and if I can, just expand on a little bit more on how we kind of budget and plan our capital expenses. So what we try to do, the Water Commission, we've really put together a 10-year capital plan. And what we do is go through and project anticipated revenues over that period of time. And we try to determine how much retained earnings we're going to use for a project and how much we may consider bonding for a project. So we've gone through that exercise out about 10 years. That said, we also try to maintain a minimum balance of retained earnings of at least $1 million so that should an emergency come up, we do have a bucket of money available to resolve that issue. And that is about 25% of our operating budget, which is within the acceptable, it's a good standard to hold ourselves
Okay.
to.
We're good.
I think so, yeah. I think so.
Well, if you think so, we think so.
You may want to just check in with your colleague remotely.
Martha, you okay?
I'm good.
You're good?
Good.
Do you understand all this?
Yep.
Hey,
I'm following.
okay.
We need to make a motion.
You do.
If I may, you need to make several motions.
Yeah, get us through this, through the.
Sure. So the first thing you want to do is, someone would want to make a motion to reconsider the votes, plural, of the capital outlay budget for fiscal year 2023. And then someone would second it, and then you would only have discussion on whether or not you want to reconsider. I would urge everybody to have no discussion and vote to reconsider.
We're reconsidering to add the 300,000.
You're reconsidering to
Open it.
open up the document.
okay.
And then once you open up the document, then you could have a motion, in this instance, to add,
Right.
because it doesn't presently exist, Once you do that one, though, I'm then going to present to you other changes that I'm recommending.
Okay, go ahead.
So first, it would be a motion to reconsider the previous votes taken on the fiscal year 2023 capital outlay budget.
I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider the FY '23 capital budget.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You
Martha?
have to do a roll call when you have a remote
Oh,
member.
Martha, do you have a vote?
Aye, yes.
Bruce Nightingale, aye.
Rich Larios, aye.
John Chory, aye.
Okay, so we have a quorum, and the vote is 4-0.
So you've now reconsidered, and now you would take any motions relative to the presentation by the Water Wastewater Superintendent?
I'd like to make a motion that we entertain the wastewater commission article of $300,000 for a design water project. Is that enough description?
Yes.
For FY '23.
For FY '23
As presented.
capital budget.
I'll second that motion.
Let's have a vote. Martha, can
Martha
you?
Donovan, aye.
Bruce Nightingale, aye.
Rich Larios, aye.
John Chory, aye.
Okay, Joe, we got that in?
So just, I'm taking notes. Did you identify the funding source?
The funding source would be retained earnings.
And that was understood by the maker, the seconder, and everyone that voted, correct?
I can restate the motion, if you'd like.
Go ahead.
I'd like to restate the motion of $300,000 from retained earnings in the water department for a design project in FY '23,
As presented.
As presented.
as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Martha Donovan, aye.
Bruce Nightingale, aye.
Rich Larios, aye.
John Chory, aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as you'll see on your agenda, you are still operating under new business item A, which is discussion and possible vote on changes to fiscal year 2023 capital outlay budget, including water department request, which is a new request. You have reconsidered and you have added under fiscal year 2023 the application for FY 2023 water main design for $300,000 to be funded from Water Department retained earnings. And so just so that you all know, that funding source now goes from $90,000 to $390,000 for fiscal year '23, and I'll be updating the documents to reflect that. Because you've reconsidered, you can now go back and consider any of the original votes that you folks have made. What I would ask, or what I would inform the Capital Outlay Committee of, is my intention to present to the Board of Selectmen an update this evening. So today being March 17th, Thursday, March 17th, 2022. Tonight, as you know, the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee are meeting again jointly with their fiscal year 2023 budget hearings and discussions. The Board of Selectmen has additional Board of Selectmen items to discuss, including an overall discussion on the fiscal year 2023 budget for the town. In light of that, and recognizing that the board will also meet on Monday, March 21st, to try to make further progress on the budgeting process, I will be recommending to the board that the following items be removed from the fiscal year 2023 capital outlay budget. And in every instance, I will go through it. In every instance, I will identify the project. And in every instance, the funding source is free cash. And the intent of this exercise is to free up free cash to see if the board then wants to reallocate that, for lack of a better word, to other presently budgeted requests for fiscal year 2023. So since we're in a public meeting, and this is my first instance to say it, I will say that although this is going to come across as a very simple presentation, it's anything but easy. I've said many times that municipal budgets are a statement of priority, and what I'm evincing with these actions is that the town has many priorities, but we have to emphasize those that are greater than others. So with that, you'll see first, under administration, Brooks Academy Restoration Project, $250,000 coming out of free cash. I'm recommending that that project not be funded in fiscal year 2023 and to use free cash elsewhere. Right below that, under administration, is beautify the villages of Harwich, again, free cash for $50,000. And I will be recommending that that also be removed from the budget and the free cash freed up and used elsewhere. The next item would be under community center privacy fence, $75,000. I would be recommending to the board that that item not go forward in the fiscal year 2023 budget for a capital outlay. Under the fire department, under engines, other fire-equipped vehicles for free cash. And again, as you know, the request is for $450,000. The chief has told us that they are actively pursuing a grant. Were the grant to be accepted, the cost to the town in fiscal year 2023 would merely be $22,500. So I am recommending that the full $450,000 be removed from the fiscal year 23 capital outlay budget, and that if the grant is adopted, that the fire department identify a funding source separate from capital and separate from free cash.
Let me ask you just
Sure.
for clarification.
Mhm.
We're removing 450. You said the net effect would be 22.5.
If the grant accepted.
Right, how is that being funded for?
So again, I would have to inform the fire chief of my recommendations to the board and collaborate with him on additional funding sources. But remember, we're now talking about an item,
Under,
standalone item, that would not rise to the level of capital.
okay.
I would be recommending that the vehicles for the fire department totaling $130,000 for fiscal year '23 also be removed from the capital outlay budget for that same year, and the free cash funds be available to be reallocated elsewhere outside of capital. I'm recommending that the $90,000 for vehicles for the golf department also be removed from the fiscal year '23 capital outlay budget, with the free cash funds being reallocated elsewhere.
Joe, is that out of the golf, they have retained earnings, is that 90K? Do they have a revolving fund, or what,
Yeah.
They
No,
do.
that was being
Well,
funded from free cash.
was it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have to make a note of my notes on something else very quickly. I will be recommending that under Public Works, the Bald's Field mower, and to a cost of $64,473 be removed from this capital outlay budget, and the funds be used elsewhere. And that the $495,000 for the 4 vehicles in Public Works, vehicle replacements, be removed and the funds reallocated elsewhere.
That was 495, Joe? you said?
Correct, $495 for 4 vehicles.
Wow.
I certainly stand ready to answer any questions or any additional commentary if the committee so desires.
What does that total up to, Joe?
So that's what I didn't have, and that's what I'm struggling with on my computer. I have it, I'm not able to access it presently during the meeting.
$1.5 million almost.
So I had it at roughly, because I had
Close
one
to
item that was
$1.5 billion.
incorrectly allocated.
Pretty close, yeah.
I believe it's 1.15 million or thereabouts.
We'll go with 1.5
I have a,
approximately.
Go ahead, Martha.
so does this mean, for example, with Brooks Academy, this year in the capital budget?
Repeat, please?
so if you look at Brooks Academy, because that's the first one, does it mean that everything shifts a year? Like you take it out, but does it go to the next year and everything shifts over a year?
Thank you. No, that's not the intent of these cuts.
So I'm kind of having a hard time because just taking Brooks Academy as an example, if they don't do the project that they paid for $250,000 this year, do they have to get, if they want, I don't know if it comes in any order that they have to repair these things, so they just don't do it, or they have to do it with the money they have next year and kind of push it out that way?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Please.
Yep. So thank you, Martha. Essentially, it would be the latter of what you just said. By eliminating the $250,000, which was intended to fund related projects to the rehabilitation of Brooks Academy, and also to support prior appropriations that, did not factor in contingencies and other things, that would stall the project for a period of time.
Okay, and then those vehicles, like, do they get pushed out to another period? Or, like, I'm just, based on how this plan is working going forward, will they just come back in and look for that money next year?
So what I would anticipate is what they would have to do, each of those departments that are impacted would have to reevaluate the out years on the capital plan. For example, the vehicle purchase for golf, if it's something that is essential to be brought back, they would have to amend the plan for fiscal year '24 to bring that back. For the DPW, which is a far greater number, it would impact upon the out years that you can see in the plan where they've already factored it in. So for an example would be each of the 4 vehicles under DPW that were contemplated to be replaced, the director has developed that multi-year plan over many years, and these vehicles are first up because they're all understood to be in poor condition. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
and so Martha, did that answer the question in the short term?
Well,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
let me,
So,
can I just,
sure,
before we go any further, I just want to reiterate the numbers that we're looking at.
correct,
Brooks Academy, 250,000.
correct,
Beautify Harwich, 50,000. The fence, 75,000. Fire engines, 450,000. Fire department vehicles, 130,000. Golf vehicles, 90,000. Public works, round figure, 65,000. And vehicles, 495,000. Is that what you got, Joe?
yes, you said the 450 for a fire department, correct?
Right.
Yep.
So then I go 450, 130, 90, 65, 495.
Correct,
Correct.
and thank you, because a few things. On the original spreadsheet that I had, I double booked the equipment replacement, or technology replacement, I should say, for police. So that's impacted upon my original column, and in my original one, I did not have the 450.
Okay, but
So when I was talking about the
numbers I just read to
1.15,
you,
right, the 1.15 would be
it's,
in addition to 450,000.
well, I'm coming out 1.6.
Correct. I think
1.605.
that's correct. I think
Okay.
that's the ballpark.
So literally, we're knocking off 1.6 and we're adding 0.3 on the presentation.
300,000, yeah.
Well, we're only
Yeah.
dealing in thousands. So the net effect right now with the changes is 1.3 million.
I didn't hear what was said about the ad.
The add is the 300,000 we just discussed for water, because
Right.
it's not there.
Right, everything I'm impacting upon was free cash, but correct. We've already added 300,000 to the 90,000. per
You're
water.
impacting free cash, and his is coming from returned earnings.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. But the net effect for the town is 1.3 million.
All in for that bottom
All
line
in.
number, which was originally 3.8 million plus.
Okay, can we ask the question, Why?
Certainly, that was the additional narrative.
Okay.
Um,
Why are we knocking off 1.6 million?
And the short answer is because the town has relied in years past on free cash, not only for capital, but for operating budget items. The town is aware of cost of living adjustments, wage adjustments, snow and ice and other deficits, OPEB, et cetera, et cetera. And so that dollar amount on that side of the ledger is upwards of $3 million.
Okay, so we're
And-
trying to affect that.
So what I'm trying to do is offer to the Board of Selectmen decisions that were made. Again, a budget is a statement of priorities. And so if we're going to rely upon free cash, these are the things that are gonna be impacted. So, I'm struck by a phrase that I don't like, because I don't like the concept on many levels, but I put it out there. There is going to be some element of horse trading, so to speak. I do not anticipate anyone to be satisfied with these proposed cuts, and I do not anticipate that every one of these proposed cuts will go forward. And I do not anticipate, I do anticipate that there will be recommendations to restore items, or enhance items, I should say, that I did not enhance in my budget overall, that the board and others may want to restore or enhance. And so all of that puts pressure on every item that we have. And so I think it prudent that we had the opportunity to revisit the budget based on the public hearing that was done Monday, what was that, Monday the 14th, in anticipation for the budget hearings tonight, Thursday, March 17th, in anticipation of the board's discussion on March 21st, and in anticipation of the Finance Committee's public hearing on the capital plan and the operating budgets.
Have these potential cuts been discussed with the department heads?
Not yet. I wanted to make capital aware of it. I wanted to be able to account for it. I've already shared with the board in an email that was not discussed but will be available. And again, meant to have the updated sheet for everybody. If this is the manner in which capital wants to advise me on my plan as I'm advising you, then I will put everything together and start talking about it as early as this evening.
Well, I think in terms of, I mean, John's got some work to do after he leaves here,
A lot of work.
okay? And that's that's the Finance Committee's responsibility, not ours. But from the Capital Outlay Committee, I have said this 1,000 times, this is subject to change until town meeting.
Correct.
So I would expect that we will be seeing each other at some time in the near future to get as close as we can to what that budget number is going to be and to be revoted on, which is going to affect the plan. So whatever, I mean, fine, then let's go with it. Let's do due diligence to find out. You guys have some work to do in the Finance Committee with the Board of Selectmen. As of Monday, you had our input. And what Joe is, we are the advisors on the Capital Outlay Committee.
Right.
We are advising, or been advised, that Joe has come up and he certainly has some targets to hit and some things that he has to do, and work with you guys and the Board of Selectmen to make this happen.
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Surely.
I just wanted to, I wanted to interrupt, only to say, everything you said, I want to build upon. Because you had to discuss a proposal that was not otherwise contemplated with the Water Department, I thought it prudent to include you, meaning, as you've said, the Capital Outlay Committee has already advised and has provided that guidance to me and provided it to the town through the hearing you went through this past Monday evening. But given the importance of the Capital Outlay Committee generally, I thought it prudent to honor the work that you folks do by including you in the conversation today.
And we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, because I know, I know that I have to repair faults that were created years ago and make sure that we all move forward. And that's one of the pledges I give to the Capital Outlay Committee.
Yeah, I think Bruce and I are the only members of the Capital Outlay Committee that have experienced a major change right prior to town meeting, and we're talking in the millions, from water. And it was sort of surprising because it had never happened before. We had gone from January or February with a number, and by May, that number literally didn't change.
Right.
Whatever the capital plan was, or whatever plan, budget, whatever that was, stayed the same. And we got hit with the $1 million and change. It sort of astounded us that it was only known that night.
Right.
Okay, so I appreciate, a more analytic way to handle this.
I have a question. All these changes, they're all free cash. And they're coming out of the 23 plan. Are there any items left in the 23 plan that we would want to allocate any of those free cash amounts to? I don't think there are.
There aren't, there aren't any that I'm recommending.
Okay.
However, if I could also use that very quickly to say what is remaining
Yeah,
in the budget for '23 that is funded by free cash, meaning the priorities that I've identified, keep some, remove the others.
Okay, so the net effect is that we are really looking at a budget number as of March 17th. I'm looking at all ways of funding. Okay,
Correct.
I'm looking at free cash, I'm
Correct.
looking at retained earnings. We're looking at a number dropping literally from 3.7 million, down 1.6. Down 1.6 and then add 3. So it's 2 million, 1 plus 2, this is gonna drop to about 2.4 million,
Correct.
okay?
Generally speaking, correct.
Okay, generally speaking, round numbers.
Right, exactly.
2.4
Yep.
million. And I just want to make note that a large part of the discussion Monday night was going from about $4 million to $44 million. So now we're talking $2.4 million to $44.6 million. So I'm just preparing the Board of Selectmen, preparing the town administrator, and preparing
Right.
the Finance Committee, who sits up front and has to face these people and read the numbers and get some kind of positive vote out of this thing. And answer the question, how do you go from $2 million to $44 million? Okay?
Well, if I could, Mr. Chairman, you're about to have, I would imagine, a fairly robust discussion on that on new business item B. But before we get there, we'd have to adjudicate what you're presently considering on 23.
Okay,
But
you need
you're not wrong.
I got a few questions.
Sure.
if I may. So you've cut out all these projects into free cash, and I understand the reasoning to try to reduce the operating budget. But to follow up on what Martha was saying, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, roughly 8 projects that you've cut out this year, none are going to be moved forward to next year or the preceding years. So like the golf, any of the vehicles, the lawnmower, those have disappeared now from the 5-year plan, or are they going to be inserted somewhere within the next 4 years?
So my answer would be, I'm not recommending any other changes to the capital outlay budget for fiscal year '23. And I am recommending the capital outlay plan for fiscal years '24 through '27 as was previously presented.
So these,
I am not looking to restore.
so these 9 projects disappear.
they're gone.
But
That's my intent.
The only
With these items,
possibility,
if I could, that's my intent. However, as the chairman has said, it's then gonna go to the Board of Selectmen. It's then gonna go to Finance Committee for recommendations. So I don't know, any more than anyone else, how that is gonna all shake out. But what I'm trying to emphasize is, I have used the word cut. And what I'm trying to demonstrate in an open and transparent manner is I am not shifting. I'm cutting.
Okay,
It's my intent to cut. Because as the chairman said, there was ample discussion Monday evening about the plan. And the plan right now for fiscal year '24 is $44,632,288. And I don't feel comfortable adding anything to that, let it be $1 or $500,000.
Let me just put an asterisk on the 1.6 million that's coming off.
Mhm.
That does not mean that 1.6 can't appear on 2024 as new items.
But don't
They
they
don't
have,
have to be a carryover. There's two ways to get 1.6 million back into the plan. One is to put it in future years, and what I understand from the administrator, he's not recommending that.
right.
It could be recommended, and he's not saying that, but these department heads that are requesting these dollars can request the exact same dollars, plus more if they want, for the year '24 budget. So when we sit here next year, we may see the 1.6 appear in the '24 budget
But
as
does,
new requests.
but doesn't have to appear now?
No. That doesn't mean it's gonna happen. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
I thought that was the whole idea of a 5-year plan for those numbers to be,
They could disappear. They could disappear. They could get greater. They could be less. So what I'm saying, go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, that's the point of the amendment process. So, and that's what makes the amendment process so pernicious. It went from straight majority to 2/3 vote.
right,
So the plan can be amended,
right.
but it requires a 2/3 vote.
See, that's what I'm getting at. We can amend it, but it needs that 2/3 vote.
You're not amending if you're putting it in the current year budget. We are not having,
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I can make that statement. I understand the logic
So,
with which you use. That is what concerns me about the present state
yeah.
of our Chapter 9 of our charter, and that's why, spoiler alert, you have item C of new business today.
okay.
Yeah, because that's how I read it.
So can-
that-
Yes, Martha?
Can I question, just for my education, when the town votes, are they voting separately for the fiscal '23 budget and then another vote for the plan? Is it two votes or is it just one vote on the whole thing?
One.
So not to be cagey, it's neither, based on past practice. Every one of the capital items becomes a capital article. And so the budget
Oh,
items
good.
get voted per article. The plan,
So the town, something individually, line item.
Yes.
I didn't hear the,
Is it by line item for the budget?
no, I think.
So
we're-
I'm saying that
If
Could
it's an
reject
article, it's
something
a
by line.
line item.
Yeah, I'm a town meeting purist. I would call it an article, not a line item.
But yeah, but I'm saying
meaning-
that
Okay.
the article matches the line item.
Correct.
Okay,
In
and
the,
that-
in the
yes.
warrant,
Yes,
there is going to be the plan.
right, that's the
And
overall.
that's the other article. So
And-
one article for the plan.
Right.
That is what we cement only for a year. And the budget, every one of the article, and every one of the line items that survives, each get their own article.
Right, so if you have 22 line items, which equals 22 articles, each of the article is voted upon, and then in mass, the plan is voted on.
Right. And that's why.
Thank you.
I'm thinking that if we get rid of the golf, all these projects, they're off the plan completely. And if we want to put them in '24, then we've got to 2/3 vote that into the '24, right, Joe?
Well, first it has to pass
Yeah.
administrator and capital outlay.
Yeah,
So I don't want anyone to assume that if I'm the administrator a year from now, that I'm automatically going to restore it.
no, but if they're not, just because they're not, they're being cut this year, it doesn't automatically shift them to '24 through '27 anywhere. They've disappeared.
Correct.
Right.
That's
So
why my,
next year, when we build the '24 budget, you have to either insert them in there at that point, or add a 2/3 approval, because we're basically taking '24 in the capital plan and moving it to the capital budget next year.
Correct.
Everything that's in that line this year gets shifted over. It's already been approved.
I
So-
understand.
Okay, so it's a big,
So the question that
it's a big
I
deal.
have, the question that I have, is hopefully, what will make it change? Where do we stand as a committee trying to come up with a budget when we know next year when we sit in this room, we're looking at $44 million?
plus,
We're looking at a base of 44 million.
Right.
And if we assume we need to change it,
correct?
we put numbers in and suppose it's not approved at town meeting. It's,
Yeah, but 30 million of that was just put in as a placeholder, hoping that we were gonna get money back from the federal government to pay for some of that.
But if we don't get the money, the
If
town's
we
gonna
don't
come
get
up
the
with it.
money,
Town has to come up
then
with
it's
it.
gonna disappear.
No, it's not.
no.
Town has to
If I could
come
just
up.
add,
Go ahead.
because you are talking about the plan, sorry, no, we're still in the budget, but when you talk about the plan, 39 million of the 44 million are water and wastewater. And so what I will remind folks is, those are what I consider to be, as the administrator under contract for 13 months, pre-existing conditions. We've known that we have water infrastructure needs, and we're more than aware of about our wastewater infrastructure needs. So to me, let me be very careful in a recorded meeting in public, because whatever I say can and will be used against me in the court of public opinion.
I second
But when
that.
39 million is water and wastewater, the remainder is, quote, the regular stuff that we do. And as your chairman said Monday night, if you look at it over time, capital plan for the last few years, and generally speaking going forward, is roughly anywhere from $3 to $5 million. So there's nothing out of the ordinary, despite how big the numbers are.
And I understand that, and John, your opinion is well taken. You know, we're living with this, we have to live
Oh,
with
I
it.
understand it. I totally
Yeah.
understand this.
No, and I'm agreeing with you. This time I'm agreeing with you, okay? My question is, how do we handle the issue of if a number is there and it needs to be changed, and we do it before town meeting, we do this grand plan, and we're assuming that the vote is positive to make the change to get the number that's in the new plan. And then we go to town meeting with the new plan, and each number that changes needs a vote,
Any change to the plan.
needs a vote.
So, not
Two-thirds.
separate votes. It could be an overall vote, that someone make a motion to amend.
So that would be the best way to handle it, the
Could be,
easier.
could be.
Okay.
Because I want you folks to be able to get through item A. We're gonna talk about item B.
Okay.
But if I could, to jump ahead to item C, that's one of the many questions that I have for town council, is whatever the intent, here is the reality of the capital outlay plan. Because I want to just say one more thing on the record that I've said many times on the record, and I don't know that folks have heard it. The current Chapter 9 of our Harwich Charter, which manages all things finance at town meeting, including capital outlay, defines a capital item as $50,000. Not below, not above. That is obviously an error, and it is something that we are all ignoring. So, I have many questions for council. One of the questions I do not want to ask council is what gives us the right to ignore that? We know it to be an error, but is it an error? And so, as we get to that, we're talking about what is any amendment? What really requires 2/3? And last but not least, the word plan appears throughout Chapter 9 with regard to capital outlay. Budget only comes up once in that same chapter as it relates to capital outlay. I would love to make the argument and have town council support me that changing the budget, which would, in fiscal year '24, would be this line item, does not require a 2/3 vote, because it transformed from plan to budget. And the charter as presently listed says any amendment to the plan. But that is an esoteric legal argument that needs to be fought at a later date.
Okay, and I understand we need A, B, C, and this may be my last question. Who initiated the circumstance that we are in today?
If you mean to ask me, how did the charter come to be amended?
Basically, who changed the rules of the game prior?
This is a copy for you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
The legal answer is the town.
That's the second page
Yep,
of
it's
that.
all one packet
It's-
for,
I don't
it's all
have-
one for.
They're
Rich didn't-
mine.
Yeah,
I
Rich
don't
didn't
have one.
It's all the same.
Thank you.
This is what I have is that? Oh, okay, sorry.
The
Thank
simple legal answer is the town changed it, acting by and through its annual town meeting in 2019.
But who initiated the article if that's the vehicle
I
that got the
understand.
change?
My understanding is it was the bylaw charter review committee that was in existence in 2019.
Okay, do they exist today?
They do, I do not believe they're fully constituted in the same manner, but yes.
And I guess, does the Finance Committee and the Capital Outlay Committee have the ability to discuss the issues that we are discussing today with the people that have made this format that was voted upon to be relooked at? And I'm not talking about you talking to the attorney.
No, thank you. So that's what item C is about today.
Okay.
So I would rather hold it for that because there's
Okay.
notice, but I have a very definitive answer
Okay,
and a very definitive plan.
okay, let's go to.
Sorry, what I believe to be definitive, I
Okay,
apologize.
let's go to B, because we're gonna be.
We're going to close out A first, though.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, and vote FY '23. We've seconded it,
Okay.
discussed it, and I'd like to make a motion, if I may,
Sure.
to amend the FY, and if I speak out of place, Joe, correct me quickly, FY '23 budget to reflect the cuts that Joe had recommended. And, you want to read each cut?
I would defer to you folks. It's been memorialized. It's whatever you folks think is
You
appropriate.
want to read them, go ahead.
The cuts of $250,000 Brooks Academy, a cut of $50,000 to beautify Harwich, $75,000 for a privacy fence, $450,000 for a fire truck, $130,000 for fire vehicles, $90,000 for a golf vehicle, $64,473 for DPW mower, $495,000 for a DPW vehicle, and your total, Rich, was $1.6 million of cuts, so to speak. And we'd like to add $300,000 for water design projects funding source coming out of
So if I may, you already did that.
You already did
We
that.
We
did
did
that,
the
okay.
300.
Correct.
But that.
We
so
did the
We added
300.
it to the budget.
Yes, we
Okay,
voted upon
okay.
it. We
Scratch
opened
that
the
last
vote
thing.
to discuss it, then we
Okay.
voted 300.
I didn't
So
know if
now
it-
we're looking at the 1.6.
$1.6 million.
I need a second.
I will second that.
All those in favor? Announce your name,
Martha
please.
Donovan,
Bruce Nightingale, aye.
Rich Larios, aye.
John Chory, aye?
Okay. So you got your changes now.
And
I
1.6
So the
appreciate-
million.
budget the discussion of the budget items is complete. So now we can move to discussion and possible vote to adopt the plan as it stands
Right.
today.
For fiscal years 2024 through 2027.
Okay, there are any changes?
There are none.
I'd like to introduce a motion that we approve the plan of fiscal year '24 throughout fiscal year 2027 in the plan as presented to us.
I second the motion. All those in favor? Martha?
Martha Dunn, aye.
I'm sorry, 1 second, one.
I apologize, Martha, it's Joe interrupting again. You may
Okay.
recall, one of the reasons why you folks did not adopt the plan when you were adopting the budget is I know members had some questions. And members weren't necessarily prepared to endorse, so you may want to ask members present if they had any comments or discussion.
Okay. Do any of the members have any questions?
I do.
Okay?
I have a problem with the $2 million for the Allen Harbor Jetty in FY '24. Last year, we appropriated money for a study. As far as I know, we have not had the results of that study. I don't know what the study entails. I understand it costs about $80,000 to dredge that channel every year. But last year, there was a grant for $40,000, so the cost came down to $40,000. On top of that, they took the sand that they were dredged and sold it to the landowners to the east. So it's very possible that it didn't cost any money last year to dredge that channel. In fact, we might have made money. I am against this $2 million appropriation until I hear the results of the study. The houses that are on the east side of that channel are nourished with sand every couple of years. If that sand isn't there, those property values will depreciate because those beaches will disappear. It's very important that that sand be dredged on a yearly basis to nourish those beaches. Without those beaches, Harwich will no longer become the warm side of the Cape. We need to continue to dredge that channel so that we can have that sand. And until I hear what the $2 million is gonna do, I can't support that article.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Joe, unless you have an answer for that,
I have a response. I don't know that it would be an answer, but the timing is somewhat helpful. I certainly wouldn't have even been able to have said this back in February when you were contemplating the plan. And as of this utterance, I still don't know exactly, meaning the harbor master reached out to the chairman of the Board of Selectmen several weeks ago to establish a point on a board meeting for the consultants that the town has hired through the harbor master, GEI Consultants, who are doing the study that Member Nightingale mentioned. The last draft I saw was that the presentation of the Allen Harbor Jetty study was to come before the Board of Selectmen next Monday, March 21st. I have heard, and I cannot confirm, that may have been actually pushed out until March 28th. However, my understanding is that the consultants have done their report and are now reporting to the selectmen as they are required. Again, I don't know that that's a response or a rebuttal, but it meant, an answer or a rebuttal, and I certainly don't mean to rebut, but it's rather that I now understand that GEI Consultants are expected to present to the board before the end of this month.
John?
It's just a comment, Bruce, and, gauging that we're not, I don't want to speak for everyone, but with this 2/3 approval, this 2/3 removal vote, having it in there at $2 million, we could easily disapprove it next year, or if we remove it this year, put it back in. So I understand your thoughts completely, Bruce, and understand Joe's thoughts on having the consultants coming in. I have questions too on it, you know. So I think I'd rather keep it in, listen to the consultants, we approve it, and it's, so 24 now moves forward next year for the budget, and that we can go through the same process as we've just done. It'll be in next year's budget at $2 million. We'll then know if we need it or not. If it's determined we need it, guess what? The money's already there. We don't have to do any 2/3 vote. If we don't need it, then we can do what Joe has done tonight, recommend that it be cut.
Well,
So that's my, I mean, it looks like we win either way.
I still
Yeah.
can't support the 2 million.
Yeah, I understand.
And it's a very important issue
Sure.
that really needs to be vented. The ramifications of that jetty and the reconstruction of that jetty will affect an awful lot of property owners in Harwich that use those beaches.
I agree. It's-
And I just can't support it.
Well, it's almost akin to,
Let's not have a crosstalk, okay?
Okay.
We're going through the chairman. And since I'm the chairman, I want to say something
Okay.
that affects you both.
sure.
I think once we hear whatever the report is to the Board of Selectmen, we have enough time that we can gather and get the harbor master and maybe one of the engineers to come in and speak at a capital outlay committee meeting. And we can still revote the plan. You buy that? I mean, you're totally against it now, but if you had a good reason to change your mind, we can still pass this without your vote.
That's right.
Okay, but you're making your point.
And I'm not gonna.
And I think, no, but to help you understand what the town is doing and what has been done, I think we need to have the harbor master back in, get the results of the study, and see how the whole thing ends up in terms of Bruce's concern. Is that fair?
Yes.
So we can vote the plan tonight, and we can vote it with a no.
Yep.
Correct.
And continue on.
Right, and,
We're spinning our wheels.
right, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
to that last point, there is an urgency to taking a vote on the plan part of it,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes.
Because the budget has been adjudicated
Right.
twice now,
Right.
right? But it is well-positioned. I say that because a week from today, I'll be appearing before the Finance Committee at their public hearing on the capital outlay plan, which I interpret to mean both the budget and the plan,
Excellent.
as well as the operating budget. But it would be helpful to say that the plan was adopted, and if it's not unanimous, that gives me ample opportunity to speak about concerns about the plan as conveyed.
And also put an asterisk there is, and I'll say it again till I die, the plan and the budget are subject to change until town meeting.
Amen. Please
I
don't
mean,
die.
You have a working document
Correct.
that you need, and that working document is subject to change.
Correct.
It's not set in concrete.
And lastly, if I could, on behalf of, well, as your town administrator, I have heard clearly the concerns of the members of the capital outlay. I will also get back to you folks and let you know for sure when the consultancy study's coming up.
Yeah.
But can absolutely ensure that a future discussion with our harbor master, with me and anyone else that should come back to bear on it, because I appreciate what the membership is giving me a heads up on. And I'm well served by this discussion today to be mindful of some of the headwinds that we might be up against.
Well, I think,
So
Joe,
I absolutely appreciate
if
that.
we can change that number now, it doesn't go to town meeting having to vote 2/3 next year. If we change that to 2 million, that's what's presented to us now. We can change it without this 2/3 vote today.
Correct. You are not bound by the 2/3 vote.
Right, and that's critical.
Yep.
So,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
as a working document, it's critical that we meet them, find out, and that's good.
If I could, just one last point on that is, however,
Yeah.
the charter talks about, so what Finance Committee has to do next Thursday is have a hearing on the plan.
Mhm.
and it is the plan that is understood to be going to town meeting.
And I would debate that because the plan is subject to change
Correct?
and without a two-thirds vote.
No,
No,
not once it's
Plan.
presented to town meeting.
No, 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 no.
Meaning it has to be included in the warrant.
I understand that. But when does it go into the warrant?
It has to be in the warrant no later than April 4th. It's going to be in the draft warrant next Monday, the 21st.
So we can't change the number
This would be your time to change the
tonight.
plan.
This
Correct.
is it. Wow. Ain't gonna work.
What I was saying I heard and will continue to do is ongoing discussions about these capital items, for sure.
Yeah,
Not the least of which would be the Allen Harbor Jetty project.
right.
Ready to
So-
vote,
yeah.
if you're ready to vote.
Okay. Want to take a vote? We'll take a vote.
Wait, can I just ask one question, though? It's not significant. I just wanted to know, Joe, in our last meeting, there was a discussion of the bleachers in the auditorium and whether they needed to be replaced or could be repaired. And I think Rich brought up the question, well, if there's 4 of the same age, do we need to look at all 4? Has any of that been done or assessment been made?
Community center.
Right. No, I know, I'm sorry. Martha, I want credit. I pointed to the screen before you asked to speak, to remind the
Oh.
chair. I need to get credit for that. Thank you for the question, and I'm looking at the plan year of 2024, the gymnasium replacements, which is the item that goes to the bleachers within the gym. The $108,400 figure gets to all of the work that would need to be done, but the community center director, if I'm recalling correctly, said they are not in equal states of disrepair.
Okay. But that would cover all the work that would need to be done to get them to a point where they.
So I think, Martha, you broke up on the last part?
Oh, sorry. That amount of money, 108,400, is all the money they would need to get all the bleachers to a point where they could be used safely.
Correct, that's the intent of that. We do not anticipate that going up. I say that with fingers crossed because of the marketplace for sure, but that's meant to cover all of that. The study, the evaluation, and where necessary, replacement or repair.
Okay, thank you.
May I suggest, if you need new heels on your shoes and a new sole, okay? You don't get the heels done and you got a hole in your sole. So if we're looking at 4 bleachers and we can afford, first place, the liability of somebody, we say it's good to use and somebody says it's good to use and it breaks and somebody gets hurt, we have the liability. So, I don't know, it's used a lot, that building
Correct.
and that, I mean, let's look at it. We're talking about numbers like 4 million, 44 million, 80 million, 79 million. So you're talking about $108,000 just for safety reasons. Get it done. You know, I got a leak into my plumbing. It's in the bathroom, but it's leaking down to the basement. Get them both done. I don't know, but whatever.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have a motion and a second. You've had discussion.
Okay, where do we stand?
take a vote.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the plan, that the 5-year total being 79 million, well, it's got some changes, but as appears in front of us, it appears to be 79,218,781. All those in favor say aye.
Roll
Aye.
call, Mr.
A
Chairman.
roll call.
Roll call.
Martha, I wish you were here. Go ahead.
Martha Donovan, aye.
Bruce Nightingale is a no.
Rich Larius is a yes.
John Chory's an aye.
Okay.
My ears.
Your ears are, what is it, battery time?
No, just,
Oh,
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard that to be a majority vote.
I can't hear you because this hearing aid is. You good?
it rings through my ears when it rings. I didn't realize it was on.
That's why your nose is being lit, but that's,
You can't hear it now.
I was
Thank you,
with
Mr.
AT&T.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, members of the committee. Specifically, to the objections loud and clear. I understand my next steps for certain. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank the four of you for getting us to this point. And Mr. Chairman, I can't speak better than what you did the other night when you talked about the stops and starts that we've been impacted by, the headwinds that we're up against. And so I wanted to close out items A and B and segue to item C first by saying thanks to the members of the committee. I do believe, Chairman Chory, at some point, your committee is going to vote to replace the member who left.
We are scheduled to vote on that Tuesday night, Jim.
Excellent. And I've informed the selectmen that I would be reaching out to the planning board. And so I'm very hopeful that you will be joined by two more colleagues for your full complement of 7 members. And I think that's going to be important, not just for town meeting, but for future discussions on charter amendments regarding the capital process. And so if I could use that as a segue, Mr. Chairman. My breaking news, if you will, is I've already spoken to the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and I've informed him, and will be informing the board. But by way of this public meeting, I'm releasing it to everybody. I will be presenting on Monday, May 9th, 2022, the schedule of items to come before the process of building the 2023 annual town meeting warrant, operating budget, capital plan, etc.
May 7th,
May 9th,
May 9th.
so it is 1 week after town meeting.
Even the 24 budget. I thought you said 23.
The 2023 annual town meeting, which covers all of those items.
Okay.
Yep,
All
and
right.
so I say that because the other item that the chairman and I have already, that I've already broached with the chairman, is I will also that evening be presenting information to the board as to why I would ask the Capital Outlay Committee, after a lengthy recess of May 2nd to May 9th, to see if you folks can reconvene so that we can address the many charter inconsistencies that exist specifically for the capital outlay process in Chapter 9, but also to begin the process of a thorough revisiting of the charter itself. It's something that town should do regularly. This town has not done it for a number of years. And I talk about the calendar because I expect that when I release the calendar, the draft calendar on May 9th, it will just emphasize the inconsistencies of the charter that impact upon everything that we deal with. I had an opportunity to talk with the Finance Committee Chairman, the Board Chairman a few weeks ago, and I tell everybody that the way I build the calendar is no different than how town clerks create their election calendar. You must first start at the end. So we know, and I could do it very quickly with a search of my phone. Martha, you're not on camera, so maybe you could do it. And that would be to look up what is the date of the first Monday in May 2023. Because the charter is clear on that point. The annual town meeting must be held on the first Monday in May of each year. And so that is a hard, fast date. And when you know that, you factor everything in building off of that date in reverse. And so I share the frustration that I have because when you do that in the charter and the different ways that the charter has been amended, they were not amended in totality, and they were not amended with an eye towards what does this do to a calendar. And so we know firsthand, you, the Capital Outlay Committee, know firsthand what needs to change and how we need to refine the process specific to capital outlay. And I know firsthand as the administrator responsible for building the comprehensive budget message, and capital plan of what needs to change. So I'm just putting everyone on notice that when my countdown in my office goes from 46 days today until town meeting, when it goes down to 0, and the next day it goes up to some number around 365 days, that we will get right back into it.
Joe, let me just just ask a question, and I'm sure you have historical files somewhere, whether you put them in cardboard boxes or whatever, but we have been fortunate enough to be given a calendar that basically starts in September. And it tells us the date, what has to be done, by whom.
Correct.
And it speaks to the end result for the capital outlay is somewhere in January to present something. So we're looking today at an albatross. I mean, this is just not
Sure.
the norm.
Correct.
We've worked under this kind of calendar with some subject to mild changes.
Right.
But we sort of know that we kick off in September. We go through October and we meet 2 or 3 times a week. October, November. December, we start formulating this concrete report. We give it, I mean, we don't give it to you, we're working with you to
Right.
complete it.
Right.
Then we go, like what we did last Monday, we did normally January. And then we follow up with finance and so forth. We have been very lucky to, which we don't have now, every committee that participates in your questionnaire, which that questionnaire only started existing for us 5 years ago, 6
Right.
years ago.
Right.
Before then, they didn't know, and a form was made. So that's the initial part of your format, which is at the state level, or a piece of it is drawn from the state level.
Right.
And we need that as a working document. And if that's your end goal, we're with you. I'm sure, I don't know, but I hope I have the old calendar home in my files to see what we worked under before. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure, no apology necessary. I just want to emphasize that, yes, I have perpetuated calendars myself. The reason why the calendar was greatly diminished from years past is in evaluating it, because as often happens when there's a quote, new person in,
Yeah.
you hear, on the one hand, we've always done it that way, and then the new person always invariably says, well, why? And what should we be doing? And there were many of those dates that were presented as statutory, which weren't, and many of those dates that were required as essential, which aren't. And so the effect that I'm looking to do is going to be a much leaner calendar,
Okay,
and will only cover those things which are absolutely certain to be statutory. And when I say statutory in this instance, I mean either state law, or more often than not, the charter reference. And so when you do that, you go from roughly a 3-page calendar to what I expect to be a 1-page calendar.
okay.
Now, having said that, there's very little that will impact upon the Capital Outlay Committee because the dates aren't the issue, unless the dates are tied to other issues, other dates that are issues.
Handoffs.
Right. But what I want to emphasize, the reason why I'm doing this May 9th, 2022, is first of all, it's not a stunt. It is to emphasize that that tally that I keep in my office always starts at 365 plus or minus days. You, as an administrator, the finance director, if she were still in the room, would say, we begin immediately. And by that we do a debrief of department heads and other interested parties on what just happened. And then a few weeks after that, we do okay, here's what you have to start working on once I tell people Happy New Year on June 30th, because that's New Year's Eve for the fiscal year. And it is as equivalent to us in municipal government as December 31st is for the real world.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say one more thing, and that is to say, the calendar will begin predominantly July 1st of 2022 for this year, but there may be 1 or 2 statutory dates that precede that. And then department heads will be given the capital outlay form as you've seen it this year. I'm hoping to be able to correct the encoded errors. But they will get the capital outlay request form. They will get the community preservation request form and any other documents on a department meeting soon after the first of the year and say, here are your forms, here are your deadlines to administration before Labor Day, and here are your obligations after Labor Day.
You're talking about the municipal calendar. You're talking July 1st being January 1st.
Correct.
Okay, it's not
Yep.
calendar year, okay. What we also have to address, at least this committee, is not going ad hoc, getting these meetings together. I'd like to go the way we have in the past, is set basically Tuesday, 1 o'clock, or Wednesday, 4 o'clock.
Right.
We meet, we have a meeting every 2 weeks, or whatever
Correct.
whatever we need. But, I understand what we're going through, but, fortunately, we have Martha being able to pick up. We have 3 out of the other 6, 3 out of 6 physically here. And you'll have another delegate here.
Yep.
I think that we have to set our calendars early,
Correct.
so that we don't bump, I've got a doctor appointment that I made last week and you want to have a meeting. If we have at least 1 month or in a month, 2 meetings scheduled, we can always nix a meeting, but it's very important that we get it on the calendar so we can, it's just a lot easier on me, and I would like that. I think we used to go Tuesdays and Thursdays, kind of. And it's up to your calendar.
Sure. And if,
Go ahead, finish.
may I, or?
You go ahead.
And by the way, my assistant town administrator taught me this phrase. I love it. It's very evocative, and it is, don't paint the devil on the wall. Well, I used to know it as careful what you wish for. So what I'm about to say is certainly not a wish. But I also want to emphasize that we're also operating the assumption that the tremendous effects of the pandemic for the more than 2 years now, which is, we are technically in year 3 of the pandemic, that variant BA2 or any other which is now anticipated to impact does not wreak the havoc that the pandemic through the coronavirus, COVID-19, Delta variant, Omicron variant, or any others, that if we can truly get past that, because that was still a major impact and may become an impact, and that's where I have fingers crossed that we get into our town meeting in 46 days, indoors, at our community center, as we've done or haven't done for 3 years. And that just blows my mind. So all of this is predicated on, there are no external influencers on the calendar as there have been in years past. And so that's why I'm trying to say, you know what? We're, quote, back to normal, air quotes around the word normal, and this is how we will normally operate, all things being equal, going forward. So thank you.
That's fine. Do we have to discuss anything more on 3 or B,
Well-
C? What?
Before we adjourn, I just have a quick comment. I've been here a number of years. I want to publicly thank Joe. This format that we use this year is the best I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to admit, first of all, thank you. It's very gratifying. I stole it willingly and happily from the Department of Revenue, and I plan on stealing, air quotes on that, of course, their recommended process on how a capital improvement program, and that it would not be capital outlay, it would be capital improvement program, be administered by our town, because why reinvent the wheel? They have a very simple process that allows for a simple form, and this isn't their spreadsheet completely, but it mirrors their format. So thank you, Bruce, I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Chairman, you do have another member, just in case.
If she wants to say something.
Oh, Martha, are you,
I'm good. I'm good.
yeah, well, you're sitting under
Palm tree.
a palm tree and,
I haven't got a drink in my hand yet. It's not perfect.
We feel very badly for you.
So are we comfortable with the item C, discussion of potential charter amendments
Yeah.
regarding the capital
Yes.
project?
I think I
it's a
am.
good thought. Excellent thought.
And then, Mr. Chairman, very
Yeah,
quickly, if
I'm-
I could. Oh, sorry, Martha.
Go ahead, Martha.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Caleb Ledoux for helping us today, and for his colleagues, Jamie Goodwin and Matt, for their efforts, because whenever we meet, they meet. And so I just want to put it out there that appreciate all of their work. Thanks, Caleb.
Do you see any potential in the next 2 weeks, or just, are we good?
My perspective is I have ample guidance and input from the Capital Outlay
Okay,
Committee.
so do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn?
I'd like to second that motion.
All those, Martha?
Martha, aye.
Bruce Nightingale, aye.
Rich Larry, aye.
John Chory, aye.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.